Hey, it's Jessica Northey, and I have a guest speaker here, Davey J. And you're an entertainment lawyer. What's the name of your company or your business so people can find you and tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about yourself?
sure. So my firm is Davey J Law. We're located in Orlando, Florida, in the Mills 50 area, but I'm licensed to practice law in Florida and in Tennessee. And I've been practicing entertainment law for 18 years, and I also teach entertainment law at Barry University School of Law.
Oh, that's great. So we'll just get right into it. The first question we have about setting up a music business is the application of legal knowledge. So, have you previously assisted any musicians or artists in setting up their business entities, including protecting intellectual property if that comes up, and just elaborate on any challenges faced? I just wondered if it was common for artists to look at themselves as a business.
Yeah, so certainly I've done that quite a bit. I've formed lots of entities for my clients. And I think probably that is the first challenge is getting them to understand that they are a business. Like it's something that's really important to look at it from a perspective of not only what's going to help you be successful in your career, but also what's going to protect you. And that's part of the idea behind forming the entity is protecting the individual artist so that, for example, they're not individually signing contracts, their entity is signing contracts instead. And so that limits their personal liability. So it's a really important thing to do. Um, so that's one of the things that we talk about initially a lot of times when I have a new client who's relatively new to the industry or has even been in it for a little while and just never really focused much on the business aspect of it. So that's usually first one of our first items of discussion. And then as far as like protecting their intellectual property, absolutely, that's huge. Like that's everything from the copyrights in the songs that they write and the music that they record, the rights in their performing or professional name or their band name if they're in a group. So that would be trademark. The rights to control their image and how it's used commercially, and that's the right of publicity. So all of these things intertwine, and there's various things we can do to protect each one of them. But certainly most notably, we file the copyright registrations for the works they create and trademark registrations for their branding.
That sounds all very important. Would you say that an artist should do that right away, or they're brand new? Maybe they have a couple of gigs. Is that the time to do it, or is it more when you're on a tour and when should an artist really care about that?
Okay, so that's a great question. And each one of them's kind of got a different answer. So, like, as far as like doing copyright registrations, always care about it, always do it. Because if you wait too long to do it, you could potentially lose some remedies later on. Because you have copyright protection in a work the minute you create it. So you have a copyright regardless of whether it's registered. But what the registration does is gives you additional enforcement powers. And so it's like incentivized for you to file the registration either before you release the work or quickly thereafter so that you are entitled to get the full array of damages if somebody infringes your work, if somebody steals your work. You can get all of these potential benefits, which nobody wants to actually sue. I get it. I'm not encouraging anybody to file suit. Nobody wants to do that. It's only fun for the lawyers. But the thing is that if you register timely and you have that whole array of potential benefits at your disposal, it makes it a lot easier to get the other person to comply without having to file suit. So I like to say,
Yes.
show people the big stick you're going to hit them with. It gives you a bigger stick, like so people are more likely to behave. So always the copyright registrations, and those are fairly easy. The Copyright Office has tutorials. That's the only place to register them is the United States Copyright Office. Do not use a third party site or offering. Those are generally um, not worth it at best. And at worst, it's not even actually a real registration with the Copyright Office. So you get no benefit from it. Even though they claim to offer benefits, it's
Right.
legally nothing. So that's first and foremost. And then as far as like when to form an entity or when to file your trademark registration, that really depends, so we're looking at it it's going to be different for each person. I tell people before you sign a contract, probably a really good idea. because again, that way you're not signing individually, you're signing as your entity in most cases. It's a good idea to have your entity formed then. Other things, it's like, well, when you're in a group with other people, that sets out like who has the rights to do what happens if somebody leaves, what happens if you want to bring on somebody new. If you do it properly and like you form an LLC and your LLC has an operating agreement, all of that stuff should be in your operating agreement. So then that way you've got like the rules to the game before you even start playing. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
later there's a dispute or a question, all you have to do is go back and look at the operating agreement. It goes, oh, it tells us this is how we do this, right? Rather than having to like fight about it and be like, no, I don't think we should do it that way. So it kind of just makes things smoother later down the road. So that's something to consider. And certainly, like before you engage in any real big push, as far as like about to go on a big tour, about to spend a bunch of money on marketing, about to do any of these things where you're really getting behind it, both as far as effort and financial contribution into your career, like at that point, you should really consider making sure you lock everything down properly, and have your entity and your trademark filed and registered in your name before you move forward with those.
How long would it take to, like, once you file, does it take a few months to come through, or is it a weeks, or can you pay to have it rushed?
Yeah. So for your copyright, currently, and it changes just based on volume, but currently we're looking at like 2 to 3 months if you file online, which isn't that bad. But your registration date is backdated when you file your copyright registration, about 2 to 3 months. But your effective date of your registration is the date they received it. So, like, even
Okay,
though it takes a couple of months to get it registered, it says, effective as of, you know, May 6th or whatever the date was you submitted it. Trademark registration takes a lot longer. Trademark registrations right now, we're looking at about somewhere between like 15 to 17 months from the date of
wow.
the application. Oh, yeah. And like the trademark office has gotten really aggressive. So as far as like being really nitpicky about the applications. So they're not as easy to get through as they used to be. It's not something I recommend people do without an attorney. Copyrights all day long, file your own registration. Watch the tutorials on the Copyright Office website, you're good to go. Trademarks, entirely different story. It's far more complicated, even though it might not seem it on its face. There's a million ways to get tripped up. But yeah, those take about a year and a
Wow.
half right now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then forming your business. Anyways, in the state of Florida right now, if you're doing an LLC or a corporation, usually within a couple of weeks from the date that you submit the paperwork, you're all good to go and it shows up online.
Okay. I have a graphic design background, so I just wanted to point out that if somebody is about to go on tour and they haven't done this stuff, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can just put, once they file it, the trademark. If it's like their logo, they can put a TM symbol on
Yeah,
it.
you can use a TM anytime. You don't even
Okay.
have to submit your application. So the TM
Okay.
just means I use it like a trademark. It's not registered. So once you get the registration, that's when you get to use the R in the circle, which indicates it's a federally registered trademark.
Okay, great. I just want to point that out because I see so many logos without either one.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll move on to negotiating contracts and agreements. So, can you describe your approach to negotiating contracts and agreements on behalf of artists? Like, what are the key clauses you insist on to protect the artist's interest, especially for those who are new to the industry?
So, yeah, so the first thing I always do is I run through the agreement and I just talk to the client about like overall, what does this mean? What are the impacts? What is this clause mean? Why is it there? Do we need it? Do we not need it? What should be there that isn't, which is a huge thing. There's a lot of times there's stuff missing in contracts that people aren't trained to spot, but it's actually really important stuff that should be there. So I'll talk to them about that too. And then as far as like what clauses are super important for them, depends on the type of contract it is, depends on who the artist is and what their goals are. So, it's not a one size fits all thing. You know what I mean? Like you want it to fit your situation specifically, not just be very generic, right? So what might be good for you might not be good for somebody else. So all of that being said, certainly there are some things that I really tend to hyper focus on. One thing that a lot of people don't think of that really should be there frequently is approvals clauses. So occasionally, whether it be in a recording agreement or a publishing agreement or any number of other things, management agreement, anything like that, it'll say like, oh, we have the right, we being the label publisher, manager, whatever, have the right to use your name, you the artist, your name, your likeness, your image in connection with these recordings, these songs, your career, whatever, which of course they need that permission, right? Like if they're going to do their job, they got to be able to use your name. But you want to make sure, especially if they're giving consent for other people to use your name in certain ways, that you have certain approvals. Like they can't just say, yeah, you can absolutely use this artist's name in connection with these pharmaceuticals or in an ad for, whatever it is your thing is. So usually we have an automatic carve out. If it's not in there, we'll put it in, we'll negotiate it in an automatic carve out for use of somebody's name in connection with like sensitive topics, like alcohol, tobacco, firearms, pharmaceuticals, political causes, charitable causes, adult content, stuff like that. And then if there's anything the artist is particularly passionate about that they would want to be very careful about not being affiliated with, like let's say they're vegetarian, they don't
Right.
want name used in connection with, a restaurant that sells beef. That's their call, that's their brand, and it's good to make sure that they can control their branding like that. So
Right.
approvals
That's big.
clauses are, yeah, those are a big deal. And a lot of times people don't even think about it. Like they're not, I'm like, oh yeah, no, no, no. We need to make sure that you still have the reins because at the end of the day, it's your name. And when this contract is over, it's still your brand, and your brand is going to be impacted by what happens during the term of this contract. So
Excellent.
that's a big one. A lot of times people in contracts where they're getting a royalty, um, they may or may not have an audit provision. So, an audit provision is a clause in the contract that allows you to examine the other party's books and records in connection with your material to make sure that they're paying you correctly, that they're, correctly stating all of the, amounts that they collected in connection with your music or your work. And then that they deducted the right things that they were supposed to deduct and nothing that they weren't, and that the amount payable to you is correct. If that's not in the contract, they're not obligated to give you access to all those documents. And the only way you can get them is if you filed suit, if they said no. So
Oh, no.
that having that in there is a really good way. It encourages people to be honest because if you have to open your books to somebody at any given time, it's a lot less likely you're going to be nefarious or even just careless with your books because you know that it's pretty easy to get busted because you just have to open them upon request. So that's one of the things an audit clause, although an audit clause usually requires the use of a CPA, which is fair. So that's kind of a big deal. Let me see what else might be a big deal in there. Oh, statements. So sometimes it'll say that it'll usually say, especially in music contracts, it'll say like, we're going to send you statements and royalties twice a year within like 60 days of June 30th and 60 days of December 35th. Did I say 35th? 31st, December 31st. I'm trying to build in a longer break between Christmas and New Year's,
I
clearly.
like it.
But but some of them say that unless you are due a payment, they're not going to send you a statement. And I'm like, that's garbage. You should know exactly where your standing is, regardless of whether or not they have to cut you a check. And the reality is, the statements are almost always delivered electronically. So it's not like it costs them anything. And they're already running the numbers to see if they owe you money, anyways. So you should always be getting that information, regardless of whether they owe you any money. So that's something I push back on quite a bit. Because to
Yeah.
me, there's no reason why you should be in the dark about what's going on financially.
No, I think that can be motivating too. Like if your numbers are down or they come back up, you do that with analytics. Like, why not do that with your finances and what you're bringing in?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, so that's, those are some of the big ones, but like I said, it always depends like from type of contract to type of contract and really type
Yeah.
of artist to type of artist because some people certain things might be great for them and other people not so much. Like, the path for a pop star is very different than the path for like some, indie singer
Mm.
songwriter. It's
Hmm.
very underground, that doesn't want to be a pop star. Like those are different paths. So we expect to see different things along the way.
I see. So would you say the 360 deal is still like the most common type of contract. Labels are
Yeah, I mean,
wanting.
especially with the majors, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And again, like it's one of those things where it depends on who you are and who you work with and that kind of stuff. They're not great by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes that's almost the necessary, like especially I keep like going back to like pop stars. Like if you want to be in pop, like that's the path. You need a big label that's got a lot of money to market you and things like that's the direction, and that's how those labels play these days. Like that's the deal.
Right.
And certainly there's room to negotiate. Like it's not, the entire thing is not set in stone, which I don't think a lot of people necessarily either understand because they think, oh, they offered me a deal, I have to sign it as is. Absolutely not. They absolutely expect to have some negotiation go on. Like you don't list a car for sale for the least amount of money you'd take for it, right?
No.
You build it, you list it for a higher price, hoping to get, but you know what your basement is, you know what your floor is, like that you're not going to go below this. So any agreement that somebody presents, it's very similar. It's somebody's presenting you a proposal and they do expect some pushback. They do expect there is some built-in wiggle room right there. You just have to know what wiggles, like
Right.
to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And the percentage you're willing to also is negotiable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome information. If you can describe your experience in handling legal disputes or litigations involving artists or entertainers, and how do you approach resolving conflicts in a way that maintains the artist's reputation and career trajectory?
Oof. So, I mean, generally, I prefer not to litigate.
Okay.
For the most part, I will refer out litigation. I much prefer to be on the build it up rather than tear it down side of the law. So,
That's good. I mean, who would
but
want, I mean, I guess it takes a special kind of person
yeah,
to deal with
it's a
litigation.
different, yeah, exactly. But
Okay.
that being
Okay.
said, like I've had lots of clients who have helped resolve disputes because we didn't get to that point of litigation, which is great
Yeah.
because litigation is wildly expensive. Like people don't understand how much it costs because I think the problem is like people who don't have a lot of experience dealing with attorneys will see like and hear ads for like you hear lots of stuff for personal injury attorneys and stuff like, oh, you don't pay anything unless you win, right? Kind of a thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's because personal injury attorneys work on contingency, which means they're going to take a third, if not 40% of your entire winnings and they're probably not going to take the case unless they think they can win it.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? So whereas like that's really something that like personal injury attorneys do, but most others don't. Some others
That
do,
makes
but
sense.
most of us don't. Most other attorneys charge hourly for litigation. And so depending on if it's like state or federal litigation, you're looking at a couple of years, like 2 to 3 years worth of preparing for trial and hearings and all that other stuff
And
and
wow.
motions and yeah, all this back and forth and mediation and depositions and honestly, um, easily well over $150,000 at the starting.
Wow.
Yeah, like people don't realize like, and it's like you have to keep like a lot of attorneys will be like, cool, to start litigation, we need 20 grand in our trust account. We're going to bill against it hourly. And then when that gets low, we're going to need another 20 grand. And when that gets low, we need another, you know what I mean? So it's expensive. Um,
All
and
the more reason to have a good contract up
yeah,
front.
for sure. And, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a real drain on your mental state. Like it's not a good thing to be in a lawsuit. Even if you're the one suing, it's very stressful.
Yeah.
And, you have to sit there and, answer all these questions and, gather all these documents and information. And the other party will say things that upset you. And it's just not a great space to be in. So, what I always try to ascertain right from the get-go whenever my client's in a dispute is what is your best case scenario? What is your worst case scenario that you can live with? Not that you're going to be happy about, but that you can live with that being the resolution. Like anything less than that, you absolutely can't live with it. You won't be happy, but you can live with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's our range of, where we need to get them to be to avoid litigation. And also understanding very pragmatically, like is it worth it to you to spend all of that money and your time and your good disposition on this dispute when it could be going towards something more productive, and something that furthers you and your goal? Sometimes
Like
that
your
answer,
next album.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And, sometimes the answer
yeah.
is, yeah, it's totally worth it. Okay, great. Then, like we'll explore how we get there. Other times people are like, no, I would rather just move on. And if they're not the defendant, then they have that choice, right?
Right.
So that's what we look at first and foremost, because people are very quick to be like, I'm going to sue. And I'm like, do you know what that means? Like, as far as a practical matter, like what that entails, it's not fun. Like, it's not cheap, it's not fun. So once we get through that, then we look at, like what are some ways we can resolve this dispute that are maybe not necessarily immediately something that immediately comes to mind, but like get some sort of creative or alternate situation that could maybe both parties could be happy with. Because that's what we have to look at is like really what's the motivation of each side? Because they're going to say one thing, but just because they're saying that doesn't mean that's the motivation behind it. You know what I mean? Like, so what is the real concern? What is the real fear? What is their real need? Like, how do we address that? Right.
Right.
Rather than just give them what they want, because there might be other ways to get them what they need. And the last thing, I guess, there's a lot of stuff that I talked to them about, but one of the other things that comes up a lot is sometimes people are like, oh, well, we'll settle this for this much money and they can't pay me all at once. So I'll just let them make monthly payments. And I'm like, do we trust them to make monthly payments to you? Because we're already here. And if they miss payments, we're going to be right back here again. Like, so sometimes that's the only way to do it. But, other times I'm like, this is just, if we can avoid doing a monthly payment, that's going to be so much better because you're going to continue to have this person in your life. And there's a really good chance you're going to be back in a dispute before too long. So, what can we do to avoid this from blowing up again? So, looking at the resolution for like really long term lasting resolution, not just what gets us through right now and we'll be back here again. Nobody wants that.
No. Okay. That just makes me think about like something that's common is an artist will get signed and then they're shelved and they want to get out of the contract. Is that where a dispute comes in, or do they just have to write it out and
It depends. I mean, it's generally not in their label's best interest to shelve them.
okay, I think it
Um,
might be producers. I don't know
yeah.
what contracts they're signing exactly, but
Yeah, so like when you get because the thing is like especially like it does say in like recording agreements and stuff like that that the label has no obligation to put the artist in the studio. They have no obligation to release anything the artist does. It's totally at their discretion. So that's true. They can do that, and that's not a breach of the agreement generally. That would be something where you try and bake it in earlier. Like if you don't release within this much time, then the artist can get out or buy back their masters or something like that.
like
So
that.
that's like
Yeah.
something we want to do on the upfront because once you're in the contract, it makes it a lot harder to try and get out. So but it's something where it's like it's unless the label is like, wow, you sound exactly like this artist we've already got signed who we're
That's what
already
I think's
behind,
happening.
like
Yeah.
something like that, it could happen. But by and large, it's a disincentive for a label to do that because financially they're throwing money into something that is never going to bear fruit because they're shelving it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
so.
It's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not super common that it happens, but whether or not you can get the artist out of the contract, maybe, but not highly likely because it's, the label's acting within its discretion to do that.
Okay.
So it's not breaching the contract generally, because usually the contract says they can do that. So you don't really have any
Mm.
power to negotiate because it's like, well, they're not doing anything wrong. Like,
Right, right.
I can't force them into like, hey, you better behave or else because they're already behaving, like so. It's just, yeah, it's one of those things where it could happen, but it's something where, again, if we want to deal with it, let's deal with it before it comes with a problem, becomes a problem, and, get some sort of little escape hatch baked into the contract so that
Yeah,
if
I
you
like
feel
that.
out, you can, get out.
Okay. Great. Great. That really wraps it up for, setting up a business and thinking about contracts. Um, so how can an artist reach you for guidance on additional steps to formalize their music career as a business entity and any intellectual property that they have and everything that we talked about? Like,
Yeah. Absolutely. So our website, it's just my name. It's davyj.com. My last name is spelled out Jay like a bird. So davyj.com is our site. And then on all of our socials, we're Davy J Law. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all that fun
Yeah.
stuff. So you can reach us through there as well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you on the next one about, let's see, legal and ethical considerations.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome back. So, my first question is about reflecting on your experience in the music industry or working with artists. Could you share a story that highlights a common legal challenge for an unsigned musician that often counters? And how could you learn from this narrative to protect their dreams and their hard work, you know?
Yeah. So I think that the biggest problem that I see unsigned artists face is that when they start working with people, it's usually with their friends, right? Like, like, oh, I'm working with my friend and this person's going to produce that, or we're going to do a collab, whatever. This person's going to feature, blah, blah, blah. They don't have anything, they don't have any agreements with them. They don't have anything in writing, like nothing. And then things go sideways later, like, and this goes for like bands too, like get a band together and then like all of a sudden, like it blows up. Somebody starts dating Yoko Ono, it's all over. So the problem is that when you don't have anything in writing, you have nothing to go back to go like, this is the deal. This is what we agreed to. This is how we handle this. And so the dispute gets much larger than it ever needed to be. And that's problem number one. And problem number two is what a lot of people don't realize is that when you collaborate with other people, even if you pay them to work on your project, if you don't have something in writing with them, they're going to, in most cases, wind up being a co-owner of the rights to that work.
Oh, wow.
Meaning it's not just yours, it's yours and theirs, and they can do whatever they want with it too, because you guys never signed anything to the contrary. And so that becomes a huge problem also. So it's with most things, most problems that I see were avoidable at one point in time. If we would have talked about this beforehand, before it turned into a
Yeah.
problem, we could have
Yeah.
set it up so that when this situation arose, we would already have it handled. Like it would already be dealt with. It'd be in the paperwork, and we'd have really nothing to fight over at that point, and be like, okay, cool, just go your separate ways, like
I
kumbaya and
think,
all that. Have a good one. But no, it's like, now that we've spent all this time together, we've worked together, and we're very invested in this project, when a dispute arises, we dig in really hard on it. And we fight all the harder. So that's probably
that's
one of
true.
the biggest problems I see that, newer artists have is because they just don't know how important it is and they don't understand what all these problems are that could pop up. They just don't anticipate them.
Yeah, especially with your friends, you think you can trust people.
Yeah.
I know that reminds me of a project that I was working on with a group of people, and I asked everyone to sign NDAs, and then there's one person who actually was supposed to be my friend out of everyone, refused to sign it. But she would just say, "Oh, I'll sign it later."
Hmm.
And then we got into it, and I kept thinking, I'll get it from her. I'm sure I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And then I found out she was took my idea and was working on it independently with other people.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you don't realize, like, it's so much easier to get people to sign stuff up front than it is after
Yeah,
everything, because then they have no incentive to sign anything. Whereas up front, you're like, hey, I really want you to work on this project with me, but we got to make sure that everything's on the up and up and it's clear what we're doing together. So we're going to sign this to
yeah.
make sure it's clear, you
And
know? And it's people, like, it seems to me like people are really hesitant to be like, well, that's my friend. I don't want them to feel like they're not a friend and I'm making them sign a contract because I don't trust them. I'm like, no, no, that's not what this is about. This is about, like when you play Monopoly and you fight over free parking. Like,
you're gonna fight.
like you have to look at the rules. And if there are no rules, you'll fight later. You know what I mean? Like, I'm team free parking. I think there should be money in there and you should get it if you land on free parking.
Right.
But, the rules don't say that, like, so these are things
Yeah,
you have
you're
to
right.
discuss.
Because you always go to the rule book, like in a
Yeah.
game, you say, okay, well, what's the rule if you're having
Right.
an
So, like, if you
argument?
don't have a contract, you don't have a rule book.
Okay.
And now you're really going to fight because you just landed on free parking and you feel like you should be getting all this money.
So leads me to my next question is in the music industry where the personal art and artistic identities are so deeply intertwined, how important is it for musicians to understand the ethical implications of their agreements and partnerships? And do you have any examples?
Oh yeah, like it's hugely, hugely important. And sometimes those things are not necessarily obvious on their face that there might be a concern or an issue there. So, like within certain industries, we see it more in other areas, not as much in music, but we do see it in music too. Like there'll be something called a morals clause that says like you have to behave in a certain manner, and if you don't behave in a certain manner, then they could terminate the contract or whatever, which is all fine and good for the label, for the publisher, for the person on the other side, because they're obligating the individual, the artist, to behave in a certain way. And they can then terminate the agreement, distance themselves from them if the artist does something that's like, illegal or, tends to bring, public shame or ridicule upon them or the label. So we see that. So it really should kind of go both ways. But there was one situation where my client was working on this album and they wanted to have this particular group featured on a single track to work on this one song with them. And I looked into this group, who they are and who they were affiliated with. And I'm like, do you realize that this organization is very vocally and very, very strongly opposed to LGBTQ rights? And they actually do things that are very anti rights for people in those groups. And, is that who you want to affiliate yourself with? And they were like, oh my God, no. That was them. I'm like,
Yeah.
you realize
Wow.
they're technically anti you,
Wow. Okay.
and they were like, oh, I had no idea. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no, absolutely not. This ends right here. We're not working with them. We're going to find somebody else. Great. And so it was like a really like 11th hour pivot because they were very deep in the project at that point, and it did slow the production down a little bit, but at the end of the day, it wound up being very important to them that the people that were working on this particular project shared values, you
Right.
know. And so, it's definitely something that comes up. And it's something that can certainly reflect back on the artist. It's
Yeah. As
the actions or the values of the people with whom they're working. You are who you surround yourself with, right?
yeah.
So,
And I think fans today will call you out on things.
oh yeah. Yes, they will. So, yeah, you be
I'd
careful
like
about
to
that.
call that brand integrity,
Yeah,
but that's exactly, yeah, making sure everything you align with is a reflection of your own values.
right. Right, for sure.
Yeah. So the next question, we all know that the path of an unsigned musician is filled with passion, but it comes with its fair share of vulnerabilities too. So from your perspective, what are the essential legal steps an artist should take to safeguard their career while staying true to their artistic vision and values? And I'm asking this question with just a backstory of being a creative person myself, but then learning the business side. I worked with an artist and I knew what would sell and I was wanting to change them up. And they're like, no, that's not who I am. But I'm like, but who you are is like kind of nobody like really wants to hear that. But it's like, it's that fighting with that creative and like marketing business conflict, I think. I don't know
Yeah.
if that makes sense, but
Yeah. So, like,
creative expression approvals, maybe.
yeah, like, so, when it comes down to it, it's all about, I think first people kind of have to do an inventory of themselves and go, like, what matters to me?
Yeah.
What's a no-go for me? You know what I mean? Because a lot of times we don't even think about that stuff until we're in the moment. And we're like, oh, that's
Right.
not cool. That's not good. So I think that that's something that you've got to really figure out for yourself and be very clear about for yourself, first and foremost. Like, oh, I hate white chocolate. White chocolate is disgusting. I never want to be affiliated with white chocolate. Dark chocolate's the only way to go. Like, that is a personal brand statement. Like, so like on
Yeah.
something you want to, because it might be something, kind of silly like that. That is a silly thing, but for some people, like they might have a reason why.
Yeah,
Like and
yeah,
when you dig
yeah.
into it, you might be like, oh, because, white chocolate's not even really chocolate. It's, misleading. Who knows, whatever. So identifying where those points are as an artist is first and foremost. And then second of all, just making sure before you enter into any agreements that you have that ability, that latitude to not be forced into any sort of involvement or affiliation that you disagree with. And this can come about in a variety of ways. Like, for example, it's something people don't consider, but like if you sign with a label and you're under a 360 and they're going to do your merch for you, well, if you don't have approvals clause over not only, what the merch looks like, but also the quality of the merchandise and where it's made and who it's made by, you could wind up with some serious backlash about like, oh my gosh, your, t-shirts are made in a foreign country using child labor. Like,
Yeah.
those are things.
Okay.
So, those are the things that, we can bake into, or at least try to bake into your agreements to make sure that you can protect your brand and your integrity down the road, because it's a lot harder when you're a newer artist to be able to control a lot of aspects to your career, but it's getting a bit easier. People are, starting to acknowledge more and more that these things are not just an artist being difficult, but it is maintaining your brand integrity, which in the long run should be good for both the artist and the label and the publisher and the manager and the agent and everybody else involved.
That's a great point. I'm so glad that you brought that up because in the very beginning of the course, this boot camp, I start off with teaching being authentic in your brand. And sometimes branding is really hard because you think, oh, it's just colors and a logo, but it's really about who you are as a person. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to think if you haven't done any self-reflection, maybe you don't actually know. That is the base and the foundation for everything you do moving forward, especially in contracts.
Yeah. Yeah. Branding's super important. And even being no brand is a brand. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean?
Very minimalist brand. As long as that's what your thing is,
Yeah.
it's still a brand, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on to the next thing is looking back at the journeys of various artists you've encountered. Could you share an instance of gratitude expressed by a musician you've navigated a challenging legal situation with your guidance? And how does fostering a relationship of trust, mutual respect between an artist and yourself for their well-being in the industry?
There have been like lots of really kind and sweet things like people have done, and it's just like it's always something like, oh my God. So like I've been given credits on albums and films and stuff like that. Not that I asked for it,
Awesome.
signed an
That's really cool
for
though.
it, but no, it's super rad. It's like special things too. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, because I'll never have that on my own. Nobody would ever ask me to sing. I can't play anything. I'll never have my own, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? So to get, credits is like something where it's like, oh man, and it's more than that. It's like they thought of me. Like when it
that's
comes to sit down and
appreciation.
write your liner notes and your thank yous and stuff like that, and they thought of me, like I must have really had an impact. Like they must really value what I did for them, and I really appreciate that they do. So that's kind of huge. Certainly people will like write reviews online, which I also appreciate. One of my favorite ones though, which is it's kind of funny, is that I was representing a client who was offered a contract by this other party. And so I went through the contract and did a whole bunch of revisions and like pushed back really hard on several different things. And, finally got the contract to where it needed to be. My client signed it. Everything went fine. That all worked out. But I found out a couple of years later that somebody who reached out to me for a consultation, they go, oh, we got your name from so and so, who was the other party on that deal. And
No.
they, yeah, and they told me, the clients in that meeting told me, they were like, so he told us that you were not his attorney, you were the other attorney, and you just rocked his lawyer so hard on that deal that he recommends you instead of his attorney. I'm like, oh,
Ooh, that's a win.
I was like, man, that's a good one. I'm like, am I allowed to send him a thank you card? I am not, because he's represented by opposing counsel, but I would have if I was allowed to. So that one was like kind of the most unexpected, but also one of the strongest thank yous I could have gotten was like, like, hey, you did great for the other guy, take care of my friends now, which is what it was, he was telling his friends what attorney to use, and I'm like, I am so, I'm full of gratitude for that somebody acknowledges that and go like, oh no, she's, good and whatever. I appreciate that people have that level of faith and trust in my abilities, that I'm going to take care of them because that's all I ever want to do is, just take good care of people and make sure that, we get them in a position as much as possible where they're protected and that they've got guidance on how to move forward.
Excellent. Well, I'm definitely glad we're here today and
Thank
here.
you.
So, and do you recommend any websites, workshops, or books for independent artists to learn about
Yeah,
legal and ethical topics?
absolutely. So first of all, I'm a big fan of going to conferences. Like the information you get and the people you meet at
Yeah,
in-person conferences, absolutely invaluable. Like Music Biz up in Nashville is huge and they've got
yeah,
great speakers and you like just tons of people who are in the industry in a wide array of capacities, like, and the knowledge they have to share is outstanding. And and you get to meet people face to face, like, and that's the best way to build your connections and your network in the industry. So that to me is number one is go to music industry conferences that have like a good list of speakers and that have like, there have been a lot of conferences that have popped up that are not particularly as good because it's becoming an industry, it's becoming a business all its own. So
mm,
look for something that's been around for a while. Look for something with like a very impressive list of speakers and things like that, not just something that charges a bunch of money and like, oh, well, you'll talk to producers and, like vaguely stuff. Like, so make sure it's, all the bona fides check out. So that's number one. So I would say go there. As far as like books and stuff like that goes, what is it? All You Need to Know About the Music Business by Don Passman. That one's really, really good. It's like the music industry Bible. And it's like, I think it's now and it's good gracious, like 20 something th edition. Because he keeps updating it because the industry keeps
yeah.
changing. But it's really, really good because it talks about like the roles of each person and what's good and what's not good and what's the range and what's to be expected and things like that. So like to me, like that's really um, music industry Bible, the business Bible right there. And then Ari Herstand, his website, Ari's Take is really good. Um, Lots of great information, links to other sources, stuff like that. So I would check
Okay.
that out too.
Awesome. Well, and how can artists get in touch with you for a consultation?
Our website is davyj.com. And then on all the socials, we're Davy J Law. So, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. So if you follow us on there, we also do like, little explainer videos and
Yeah.
information about events that are upcoming that we'll be speaking at or whatever. So,
Yeah, I definitely seen your content with your workshop, so it's definitely great to follow you just to learn.
oh, thanks. Yeah, I talk a lot.
Well, that's a good thing. You're a lawyer, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got stuff, I got knowledge and I got stuff to say. So,
Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add that we didn't go over you think might be important?
um, yeah, so it's never stupid to ask a question. It's never a bad idea to get things clear. Because that's, I see people do that a lot. Like, well, I didn't ask. I didn't know. I don't know. And I'm like, ask. Nobody knows all the answers,
Right.
And so don't expect that somebody expects you to know everything. Like some people feel like, oh, I can't ask that because then they'll know I don't know. I'm like, nobody knows everything, man. Like I, tell my
Yes.
students, I ask a question. I'm like, great question. I have no idea. Let me research that. Like that's, like,
It's all circumstantial
yeah, like so don't
situations.
ever
So,
feel like embarrassed because of your lack of knowledge or understanding. Be proud of yourself that you're seeking out knowledge and understanding, and that to me is the best path forward is just constantly seeking more knowledge and understanding so that you can navigate your path more, uh, adeptly. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate your time so much,
thanks
and
for
looking forward to speaking with you in the future. Forward to speaking with you in the future. Forward to speaking with you in the future. Forward to speaking with